Video I'm going to be comparing two different animation studios. Two of the big ones are putting out movies right now, Pixar and DreamWorks. Now, I've done a stream talking about Pixar's movies. I've done a stream talking about DreamWorks movies. In this video right here, I'm going to compare the two different studios. First of all, I've actually rewatched more Pixar films than DreamWorks films. When it comes to Pixar, they've put out 28 theatrically released movies right now, plus also the Planes movies, which are not technically from the studio Pixar, but they're spin-offs to the Cars movies. I've rewatched 22 of Pixar's theatrically released movies, then there's 6 of them that I've only seen one time. I saw Elemental in theaters during 2023. I have not seen it since then. I saw Lightyear in theaters back in 2022, haven't rewatched it since. I watched Turning Red for the first time not too long ago. Once I was done with that, I was like, I don't want to rewatch this movie. I watched Cars 3, Brave, and The Good Dinosaur for the first time not long ago. Those are, especially in the case of Brave and The Good Dinosaur, Pixar movies I'm not as interested in rewatching. When it comes to DreamWorks, they've currently put out 48 theatrically released movies. You have Joseph King of Dreams, which is a DreamWorks film, but it's not a theatrical movie. It was released direct to video. Plus, you also have like Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate on Peacock, which I don't think is directly put out by the studio DreamWorks, but it is a follow-up to the DreamWorks movie Megamind. You also have something like Chicken Run 2 or Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance of the Fowl, which are both follow-ups to a DreamWorks movie. Chicken Run 2 is a sequel to Chicken Run. Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul is another Wallace and Gromit movie. I think it is a sequel to Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I don't know if Chicken Run 2 or Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul were actually put out directly by DreamWorks, but they're certainly connected to the studio DreamWorks. Actually, just yesterday, I watched Spirit Untamed, which I had not seen before on Peacock. So now the only DreamWorks movies I have not watched are Trolls 1 and 2. When it comes to DreamWorks, as I talked about in my stream, this studio has definitely had a lot of ups and downs, that is for sure. Because on the one hand, they've done How to Train Your Dragon 1 and 2, which I think are fantastic movies, but they also did Shrek the Third, which I would say is not a good movie. It doesn't have the charm that Shrek 1 and 2 had. It's not very funny. It doesn't have really a compelling story or engaging characters. Doesn't introduce engaging new characters the way that Shrek 2 did. This is a studio that on the one hand did Shrek 2 or Kung Fu Panda 2, which I think are fantastic sequels, but they also did Ants. It's the first DreamWorks movie, and I don't think it's one of the stronger DreamWorks movies. They also did the Bee Movie, which I'm not a big fan of. I think the central premise about a bee and a lady having a relationship is very creepy, so it doesn't really work. This is a studio that did Prince of Egypt, which I think is a fantastic version of the Exodus story, but they also did the movie, I'm trying to think of name of it. They did that movie that's under the water. Shark Tale. Yeah, that's the one. I don't know why I didn't think of that name immediately. Yeah, Shark Tale. I don't think that's a very good movie. I actually watched it not too long ago. I feel like I had seen it before, but I don't recall when exactly that was. Shark Tale is a pretty unlikable main character. And the sharks, frankly, come off as just stereotypes. So I don't think it's a very good movie. It's not one I'm interested in rewatching. Now, when it comes to Pixar, what makes this studio very impressive, to be honest, is that they put out 28 movies right now. Almost every single one of their movies is good to great. I think they've had very few misfires. Cars 2 and Turning Red are the only Pixar movies I would say are outright misfires. And then there are other movies that are not quite as strong, but are still absolutely better than animated movies you get from other studios. I mean, I would say Brave and the Good Dinosaur, for example, are some of the weaker Pixar films, mainly because they just don't feel as fresh as other Pixar movies. They don't have the same inspiration that Pixar usually brings to their movies. Brave especially feels more like a movie that Disney Animation would put out rather than a movie Pixar would put out. The plot, main character feel pretty familiar. The Good Dinosaur, I think it's just more of a dull movie, more of a forgettable movie. Cars 1 and Cars 3 are not as strong as other Pixar films, but I don't think that they're bad. I mean, when Cars is the weakest movie in Pixar's initial run from Toy Story to Toy Story 3, that's incredibly impressive because Cars is still certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a movie that 3/4 of critics still recommend. Then you have a movie like A Bug's Life, which on a visual, technical level, sure looks dated now, but I think it's still a really good movie. And then you have Lightyear, which I don't think is a misfire. It's not like I would say it's a disaster, but I think that while there are good aspects to this movie, it's a disappointing movie. It's not as good as it should have been. But, however, if you compare Lightyear, Brave, and the Good Dinosaur to, say, Open Season or Trolls or Smurfs, you go, oh yeah, some of these weaker Pixar movies, Monsters University, Finding Dory are also examples of this. They are clearly better than animated movies you get from other studios. I mean, just compare them to like the first Secret Life of Pets movie, and you see a big difference. So I think it's very obvious that Pixar just is more consistent overall when it comes to their filmography. DreamWorks put out Wild Robot in 2024, which I think is a fantastic movie. But then they also did Sinbad Legend of the Seven Seas, which I think is one of the weaker DreamWorks movies. It has a main character that you can't really root for because he's not particularly likable, though there are good aspects to that movie. As I talked about in my stream, some of DreamWorks movies are definitely more kiddie, like Trolls or Boss Baby. The other DreamWorks movies are clearly more mature, like Rise of the Guardians or Kung Fu Panda 2 or Prince of Egypt, for example. That'll wrap things up for this video here.